Here is my audience members. Oh, there's the third one. Okay. You always see those infomercials on TV talking about how you can feed and send a kid to school in Africa for only $1 a day. But you never see those commercials saying, send an American kid to college for $10,000 a year. And I can't help but to wonder when the cost of higher education became so outrageous. The cost of tuition for higher education has increased dramatically over the years. And from the higher education state funding trends and policies on affordability by the United States Government Accountability Office, they say that from fiscal years 2003 through 2012, state funding for all public colleges decreased while tuition rose. Specifically, state funding decreased by 12% overall, while the median tuition rose 55% across all public colleges. Back in the days when your parents went to college, they never imagined that nowadays college would be so expensive. And the increase in tuition is making it almost impossible for some kids to attend. The current policy on higher education funding is that the Department of Education provides $136 billion in assistance towards students through loans, grants, and work-study programs. In addition to these forms on federal financial aid, states play a key role in promoting affordability in higher education in that they provide a significant amount of financial support to all public colleges and universities. However, persistence through state budget constraints have limited funding for public colleges, and that's from the United States Government Accountability Office as well. The current policy does allow funding through grants and loans, although sometimes it still isn't enough for those students who can't afford to attend college. My proposition is the U.S. Board of Regents should allow more government funding for those students who maintain a 3.5 GPA through their years in college. Like I said, the cost of higher education is making it very hard for people to attend college with all the financial problems throughout the world. And from Daniel Phelan, from the Clear and Present Crisis in Community Colleges, he says rising operational costs are also a fiscal reality facing community colleges. According to the American Association of Community Colleges, the average annual full-time tuition is currently $3,260 boards, and college administrations struggle mightily to keep these costs low as possible to provide a pathway for every person to realize the American dream. I think that's really important to realize that when kids grow up, they dream about going to school and going to college, and sometimes their parents don't have enough financial stability to send them to college, which really is heartbreaking. And I feel like with more funding, more kids would be able to go to college. And with the financial problems and inability to attend college, there is another problem associated, which is the worker shortage around the world. And there's a shortage of workers that are educated enough to work those specific positions like nurses and doctors. And from Kai Wo Lee, from Enhancing the Link Between Higher Education and Employment, he says the low employment rate of college graduates is a worldwide phenomenon, and many governments have responded by trying to enhance macroeconomic growth rates, labor market flexibility, and higher education quality. He's basically saying how a lot of kids can't go to college because of how expensive it is, and if the prices were lowered, many more students would have the ability to go to college, which then in turn creates more workers in the job force. Another problem associated with kids not going to college and not being able to afford it is social disgrace. Many kids will be looked down upon if they can't afford college or if they don't attend college, which is also a problem today. And All of these issues with kids being unable to attend colleges is becoming a big problem, and I think there should be more funding allowed for those who maintain good grades and work hard. And funding for grades can happen with loans and grants. And from Catherine Best, from The Credits That Count, How Credit and Growth and Financial Aid Affect College and Tuition, she says that federal and state governments try to improve access to higher education for Americans through expanding financial aid programs. These programs allow thousands of Americans to attend school, but prices continue to rise, promoting governments to offer more and more financial aid. She's saying how with the cost of higher education increasing so much from year to year, there does need to be something done with more financial aid so that people are able to attend college. And with more financial aid being allowed for students to have accessibility to that, there would be more motivation, such as if you get some of your college or most of your college paid for, you are more motivated. And from Christine Neal, from the Rising Student Employment, the Role of Tuition Fees. In 1979, less than 30% of full-time university students in Canada worked for pay during the academic year. By mid-2000s, this had risen to 45%. That's saying that while students are at school, they're more motivated to be at school, and they will try harder if there's more financial opportunities. And from Bruce Kimball, from The Rising Costs of Higher Education, Charles Elliott's Free Money Strategy, and beginning on Howard's Revenue Theory of Cost, he says the escalating cost of higher education has been a vexing subject of national concern for several decades. In 1968, economist William Bowen, later president of Princeton University and Mellon Foundation, published a study reporting that during the prior decade of the cost of living had risen an average annual percent of 2, compared to the 8% of instructional cost per student at private universities. He's saying that the cost of higher education rose more than the cost of living, which is also a problem. And the decreasing of stress on money will benefit students in many ways. They will motivate them, and they will have less student loans to worry about. And it will also create educated workers if their tuition is paid for, if they maintain a 3.5 GPA, because it will give them the motivation to succeed in school. And from the United States Government Accountability Office, they say that specifically an additional $1,000 in aid received was associated with a 2 to 7% increase in persistence, the likelihood that students will continue their education on average. They're saying that with more funding, students feel like they belong and they can really achieve what they are there to do. And from Hillman Tannenberg, from a Performance Funding in Higher Education, do financial incentives impact college completions? He says, considering that only half of all undergraduates attending public four-year colleges earn their degrees within 6 years, strategies to improve college completion has become a salient public policy concern in recent years. For example, several states now include college completion agendas designed to increase educational attainment in order to meet the workforce development needs. And I believe although higher education has become harder to pay for, that doesn't mean it's impossible to attend. If the cost of higher education goes down, that means more educated workers in society. The U.S. Board of Regents should allow more funding for students who maintain a 3.5 GPA or higher.